Paris doesn't ask who you were before you got here, it just turns on the lights and dares you to fall in love. Night slides across the city like soft silk, and every stone seems to remember 1,000 kisses. The Seine moves with a slow, steady breath, as if the river itself is keeping time for every heart that dares to dream. Street lamps bloom like warm stars, shining on faces that laugh and whisper and promise. A saxophone drifts from a bridge, low and sweet, curling through the air like smoke. Somewhere a café door swings open. The smell of butter and coffee floats out, then fades as the door closes and the city holds its secrets again. This is where our story begins, with summer still heavy in the air, and with two names that feel like a dare on the tongue. Belly and Benito, two souls who did not come here for a love story, but found one waiting anyway. The cobblestones keep little pools of light where couples pause and sway. Steps are slow here. You do not rush in Paris. You let Paris rush to you. A bus sighs. The metro hums underfoot. The sky is that deep ink blue that comes right before midnight, not yet black, holding just enough glow to outline the edges of the world. Along the river, bookstalls shut their green lids with a gentle click. A painter wipes his hands and leaves a streak of blue on his coat. Lovers lean over the rail, trading smiles that say more than words. The city is full, but it never feels crowded, because it makes room for every kind of love, the loud, the shy, the new, the broken, the brave. Belly walks with her hands inside the sleeves of her sweater, the fabric pulled over her thumb, keeping a little piece of warmth for herself. Benito walks a half step behind, then a half step ahead, then beside her, as if his place is still a question he is learning how to answer. Their shoulders almost touch, almost that small space between them is its own kind of music. They stop at the corner where the light turns gold on the windows, the kind of gold that makes even an empty glass look like treasure. Inside the cafe, someone turns a spoon in a cup and it rings like a small bell. Belly smiles without showing teeth. It is the smile of a girl who wants to trust the night and is scared to do it. Benito tilts his head the way he does when he is listening hard, as if the city itself is speaking and he might miss the one word that matters. A waiter brushes past and leaves a crisp paper scent behind. Somewhere far off, a siren rises and falls, a thin line through the air, and then it is gone. On a nearby table, a candle flares, shakes, steadies. Belly watches the flame like it's a map. Benito watches Belly like she is the place he came here to find. There are no grand speeches in this moment. There's only breath and light and the hush of a street that knows how to hold a secret. They move again, drawn toward the river, where shadows stretch long and gentle. The water shows two rippling shapes that belong to them. If you look closely, you might think the river knows their names, because the current pulls a little faster when they get near, eager, like a friend with good news. Belly sets her palm on the cool stone wall and lets the chill settle into her skin. She is here. Not thinking of what came before, not yet thinking of what comes next. Just here. Benito rests his elbow beside her hand, careful, respectful of the small borders we build around ourselves when our hearts are tender. Do you hear that? He asks, and he means the city, the sacks on the bridge, the soft wheels of a bike, the low hush of water against stone. But he also means the new sound between them, the quiet click as their rhythms find a match. Belly nods. She hears it. She feels it in the sweet ache behind her ribs. A breeze stirs and brings the scent of rain, though the sky is clear. Paris likes to pretend. It makes you think something is coming, and maybe it is, or maybe the promise is the point. Their eyes meet. Not for long. Just enough to say, I see you. A riverboat passes with a low rumble, and the light from its deck slides over their faces, a soft wash, a moving curtain. For a second they look like strangers. For another second they look like a story that someone told a long time ago and is telling again now, with the same words but a different ending. Benito taps the stone with 2 fingers, like a drummer counting in a song. Belly matches him, 2 taps, then stillness. The joke is small, but it feels like courage. They both laugh, quiet, almost private. It is not a moment that would make a postcard. But it is the kind that makes a promise, Far above, the tower glows steady, patient, sure. Every hour it will shimmer, but right now it simply waits, like a lamp left on at home. The city is not asking for decisions tonight. It is only offering a gentle stage, a river, a wall, a sky, two people who might be brave if the night is kind. Belly draws a breath that fills her chest all the way. Benito lets his shoulders drop, like he is setting down a weight no one else could see. The air between them changes. It doesn't spark. It softens like a blanket pulled up to the chin. In this light, love does not look wild. It looks careful. It looks true. If you were to step closer, you would hear nothing but the world as it is water. Wind, wheels, footsteps, and the steady, secret beat of two hearts learning a new city. And maybe, if they are lucky, learning each other. And so, on this warm night that smells like butter and rain, with the river keeping time and the lamps keeping watch, our story takes its first slow sip. Not a rush, not a chase, not a vow. A beginning. The kind you only notice later when you look back and see the line where the world turned. Belly and Benito stand side by side, not touching, close enough to share the same light. Paris does the rest. Summer doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hums, soft and steady, the kind of music that slips under your skin without you noticing. For Belly and Benito, Paris was that music. The city folded them into its arms not with fireworks, but with small, careful gestures. A scoop of melting gelato on a hot afternoon. A crooked smile caught in a shop window's reflection. Fingers brushing the same book spine at a street stall, then pulling back, both of them laughing like they'd touched fire. These were not grand confessions. They were fragments. But fragments, when strung together, can become a necklace you never take off. And so, without either of them naming it, something delicate began to grow. It was in the way Belly tilted her chin upward to take in the painted ceilings of Sainte-Chapelle, her mouth parting with awe. Benito watched her, not the glass. He swore the colors on her face glowed brighter than the sun through stained glass ever could. She turned, caught his gaze, and rolled her eyes, pretending she didn't notice the way his ears flushed. But later, when they walked back into the ordinary daylight, she lingered a little closer to him, like the colors hadn't faded. They'd simply shifted between them. Every corner of Paris seemed built to test how much distance they could hold between their bodies. The streets narrowed, pressing them side by side. The cafes offered tiny round tables where their knees touched by accident. The metro, crowded and warm, left her hand near his on the metal bar, close enough that one sharp stop could push their fingers together. They never planned it, but the city insisted. Benito once joked, "Paris is trying to ship us," and Belly laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. But inside, her chest hurt with the weight of truth hidden in a joke. At twilight, when the light turned honey-soft, they walked along the Seine and let the world blur. A mime blew invisible balloons for children. A violin sang somewhere behind them, and the notes carried forward, twining around their steps. Belly leaned into the sound. Benito leaned into her silence. That was the rhythm they found. He was the voice, she was the pause, and together they created sentences neither of them had learned to say out loud. Sometimes they didn't need words. A shared glance was a chapter. A smile stretched into a story. Once, on Pont-Neuf, they leaned over the edge and looked down at the water flashing with city lights. Belly whispered, "It feels like the river is alive," Benito answered. "Maybe it is. Maybe it knows something we don't." She turned to face him, curious, but he only shrugged, like he hadn't just dropped a secret into the air. That was Benito hiding tenderness in plain sight, waiting to see if she'd pick it up. The Louvre was a maze. But Belly remembered every turn because Benito narrated them like they were explorers charting new territory. He made her laugh until the guards gave them looks, but she didn't care. Laughter in a place built for silence was its own rebellion, and Belly liked the way Benito carried rebellion so lightly, like it was just another kind of love. They stopped in front of a painting neither of them could name, but Benito said, "She looks like you," pointing at a girl in brushstrokes and shadows. Belly shoved his arm, denying it, but her smile betrayed her. Later that night she pulled up the image on her phone. Zooming in and out, wondering if maybe he had been right. In the mornings, they found cafes with chairs spilling onto sidewalks. Coffee cups clinked, croissants flaked, pigeons strutted like they owned the cobblestones. Belly would tuck her hair behind her ear and sketch on napkins tiny doodles of the tower. The street, sometimes a boy with untidy curls that looked suspiciously like Benito. He'd watch, pretending not to, his chin propped on his palm. When she caught him, he'd grin, unashamed. "What?" "I like seeing what I look like in your eyes." Belly would roll her eyes. But secretly, she folded the napkin into her pocket to keep it wasn't perfect. It was never meant to be. Benito teased too much. Belly overthought everything. Sometimes their silences stretched a little too far, and sometimes their laughter overlapped until it tangled. But in a city where every moment felt fragile, like glass that could break if you looked away, they were learning the art of being gentle with each other. That gentleness was their rebellion on one of those golden evenings. As the bells rang from Notre Dame and the air smelled of bread and river water, Benito leaned closer and said softly, "You make Paris feel smaller." Belly frowned, unsure. He smiled, brushing the words into her like a secret, "Because when you're here, it's the only thing I see," she wanted to answer, but her throat caught. Instead, she laughed, too quickly, and shoved his shoulder again. Yet even as the moment passed, the words settled under her skin like ink, and she knew they would never fade. Their connection wasn't fireworks. It wasn't thunder. It was the steady flame of a candle in the wind, refusing to go out. It was the quiet click of footsteps that matched without trying. It was Paris holding its breath, just long enough for two hearts to decide if they wanted to beat in the same rhythm. And though they hadn't yet named it, hadn't dared to call it love, the city already had. Paris may be a city of love, but even here, hearts stumble. For Belly and Benito, the cracks began not with shouting, but with silence. It happened in those in-between moments when the laughter dimmed, when the music of the streets fell away and they were left only with themselves. Belly carried the weight of summers past, memories that stretched back to another shore, another boy, another kind of promise. Benito felt it even when she didn't speak of it. He noticed the way her eyes sometimes drifted elsewhere, as if chasing ghosts. And in the reflection of her silence, he began to wonder if he was only a chapter in her book, never the story itself. One evening they climbed the steps of Montmartre. The city spread beneath them, glowing, endless, untouchable. But the air between them grew heavy. Belly wrapped her arms around herself, not from the cold, but from the ache of choosing. Benito leaned against the railing, his jaw tight. The easy rhythm they had found along the river faltered here. He broke the silence first. "Do you ever think about what happens when summer ends?" His words hung, fragile as glass. Belly turned toward him, her lips parting, but no answer came. She didn't want to say yes, though her heart whispered it. She didn't want to say no, because lies have their own weight. The tension wasn't loud. It was sharper for being quiet. Every brush of their shoulders now felt like a question. Every pause, a reminder that the future was waiting. Benito feared being temporary, something she'd remember only when she thought of Paris. He wanted permanence, but he was afraid to ask for it. Belly feared losing control of her heart, giving it too quickly, too fully, only to find it misplaced again. Paris pressed them closer, but it also pressed them harder. The breaking point came on Pont Neuf, where they had once leaned over the rail and whispered about rivers being alive. Tonight, the water seemed darker, its reflections blurred. Benito's voice cracked the night. "I don't want to be just a distraction for you." Belly flinched at the words, as if he had pulled something hidden into the open. Her breath caught, her defenses rising, but behind her eyes was fear, not anger. "You're not," she whispered, but the hesitation clung to her voice. He turned away, staring out at the city, the glow of the tower painting him in gold and shadow. The silence that followed felt longer than the river itself. For the first time, Belly saw Benito not as the boy who made her laugh in crowded cafes, but as someone fragile, someone who could break. And for the first time, Benito realized that love for him was not just joy, it was risk. A risk of giving his heart to someone who might never be ready to catch it. In Paris, Even the streets know when hearts are heavy. The violinist on the corner played a sadder tune. The candlelight from the cafes flickered lower. The night seemed to lean in, listening. Belly reached for words, but they slipped away. Instead, she let her fingers brush against his, hesitant, trembling. Benito didn't pull back. Yet the space between their hearts remained, a question neither could answer tonight. Their conflict wasn't a storm that shattered everything. It was a slow ache, a bruise beneath the skin, something that hurt every time it was touched. And though the city still shimmered around them, Paris no longer felt like an endless promise. It felt like a clock, ticking down the moments until a choice had to be made. Paris teaches you that not every ending has to be sharp. Some endings arrive like the last note of a violin, lingering, tender, refusing to leave all at once. For Belly and Benito, the city became a mirror of their hearts, brilliant, fragile, and fleeting. After that night on Pont Neuf, they carried silence with them like an extra shadow. Yet silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is a space waiting to be filled. The next morning, the streets smelled of rain, though the sky had already cleared. Calf awnings dripped. The world shone clean, as if it wanted to remind them that even storms leave beauty behind. Belly and Benito sat at a small table outside, cups of coffee cooling between them. Neither rushed to speak. Instead, they let the city hum around them, bicycles passing, pigeons fluttering, a shopkeeper sweeping water off the cobblestones. Finally, Benito said softly, "We don't have to know what comes next." Belly looked at him, startled. He wasn't asking for forever, not anymore. He was asking for now. For this. For the courage to love without guarantees. Something inside Belly loosened. She realized love did not always arrive as a choice between forever and nothing. Sometimes it was enough to exist in the present, to carry the weight of joy even if tomorrow might take it away. She reached across the table and rested her hand over his. It was not a promise. It was not a vow. It was simply truth. She cared. Benito smiled, not the wide, teasing grin she knew, but something softer, almost shy. In that smile was acceptance. That evening, Paris gave them one last gift. They stood beneath the Eiffel Tower as it began to shimmer, 1,000 lights flickering against the velvet sky. The crowd around them gasped, but Belly and Benito only looked at each other. In the glow, their faces held no tension, only peace. They did not kiss. They did not declare. They simply stood side by side, watching the city burn gold around them, letting the moment sink into their skin like ink into paper. Later, as they walked along the Seine, Belly whispered, "Paris will always remind me of you." Benito laughed softly. "Then I'll never really leave, will I?" They both knew summer would end. They both knew choices waited beyond the horizon. But for now, with the river reflecting their shapes and the night wrapping them in gentle arms, they chose to stop asking questions. They chose to live the answer. When they finally parted at the steps of her hotel, there were no dramatic goodbyes. Just a long look, a shared silence, and the kind of smile that hurts because it's too full of meaning. Benito tucked his hands into his pockets, Belly into her sleeves, and they turned in opposite directions. The city held them both in its glow, each step carrying the weight of something unfinished, yet unforgettable. Paris does not keep promises, it keeps memories. And in the heart of that city, Belly and Benito left theirs, shining, incomplete, beautiful. Some stories do not close with a period. Some end with an ellipsis, trailing into the unknown. This was one of them. And so, as the lights dimmed and the summer began to slip away, the truth remained. Sometimes love is not about forever. Sometimes love is about the moments that teach us who we are. And in Paris, under the weight of summer, Belly and Benito found theirs.